On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, when did you start believing in this Thunder team? What was the turning point this season, and how good can they be?
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, media member, and beat writer for InsideTheThunder.com, Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. Email the show, LOThunderPod@gmail.com. On today's show, we're joined by Michael Martin, Michael on Sports on YouTube and TikTok and every other podcasting and platform out there. Today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. They can help you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedInNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedInNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Michael, what's going on?
Not much, Rylan. How are you doing? Happy to be on.
Good. It's winding down the season. It's kind of in that in-between zone where there's still a lot of regular season to be played, like 15 more games to go. But yet, it's also at that stage where you're already creeping toward the playoffs, and you kind of are anticipating it. Cannot wait to get to that point.
Yeah, we're in the prep days. You're seeing some teams shut down a lot of guys like the Jazz and sort of gear up for the lottery. And then you're seeing more teams like the Thunder and others in the playoff contention sort of gear up and ready their playoff rotations in anticipation of the postseason.
It's going to be fun to see where the Thunder fall in all this. And right now, they cling to first place in the Western Conference. That, of course, has been changing hands left, right, and center. Right now, the Thunder, after Kyrie just put out one of the best game winners you're ever going to see, the Thunder now lead by half a game. But with a tiebreaker, they sort of lead by a game and a half if you want to get some funny math in there. But, Michael, this season has been better than anyone expected. Like, even if you were the most optimistic Thunder fan, you would have not have believed that they'd be sitting here at 47-20 and in first place in the Western Conference. At what point this season did it feel different, or did it feel like this Thunder team had arrived? Like, what are some of the marquee, kind of landmarks of, hey, this team's like not only good, but first place in the West good?
The first one that comes to mind, I have a few, and maybe we can go back and forth here, was Chet's overtime shot to go into overtime against Golden State on the road. That one where Shai has 40 points on 18 of 29, Chet 36 and 10 on 14 of 22. Probably the most exciting play of the season, and that was only 15 games into the season. And I think it was one of those foreshadowing moments for how good this team could be. Not that the Warriors are world beaters, but that's still a tough team to beat on the road for a young team, and the Thunder went out and did it.
Yeah, and we at that time didn't exactly know what the Warriors would end up being this season, and that's still a great place to play, tough place to play, and all the travel that goes into it and everything. And to see the rookie not be phased in that moment, have this wild turnaround three, like that was something that has to stick out as okay, this team is good enough to get it done and good enough to improv and make things happen, which you have to have down the stretch of games. And you can go to Shai, you can go to Chet, you can go to J-Dub too. And so I think that's another great game. That's number one, I think, for everybody. Probably it's just a moment that sticks out. I would say also number two would be beating Boston, in Oklahoma City. And it was a game in which Boston played well. It's not as though you took advantage of a poor night or a depleted Celtics team. I was just two of the best teams in the NBA going at it. And they've proven out throughout this season to continuously be two of the best teams in the NBA, and the Thunder came out victorious.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we've had, because we cover the team, some internal thoughts of this is a measuring stick game, but that one was the first real one for NBA media in total that we're watching the Thunder of okay, let's see what they actually have. And they went out and beat the Celtics, and you can't draw up probably a better defense to guard Shai, where you have Porzingis at the rim blocking shots. All these all-NBA defenders like Jalen Brown, Jason Tatum, Drew Holiday, Derek White, and it just didn't matter. Shai was dominant, and then whenever he did start to slow down a little bit in the fourth, that's when J-Dub took over. So that's very, very impressive win, one of the top ones of the season for sure.
Yeah, I think that when you take into account Boston too at that time, they were on a historic pace to just be one of the best teams we've ever seen win-loss wise. And it's kind of difficult to measure out the NBA nowadays because it feels like every time a top team loses, you get the excuses of like, oh, this guy wasn't playing or they didn't care about this game. Denver, for example. The Thunder went back-to-back beating Denver like the span of a week, twice in Denver. But it's the Nuggets. They never care about the regular season. They're just waiting for the playoffs. So like you were excited, but there was always, like you said, the national media always had that caveat of, okay, you beat Denver, so what? That you beat this team that's going to sleepwalk through this 82-game season. When you beat Boston, the roars got louder because it's just undeniable how much Boston cares about the regular season, especially at that point in the season. And like you mentioned, what other team is better suited to match up with the Thunder and maximize their own game against the Thunder? You mentioned Kristaps Porzingis. Putting him on Josh Giddey is a huge advantage. Like we've seen what elite rim protectors can do when you play them off of Josh Giddey, and it didn't matter. The Thunder were still able to overcome that and were able to win that game. And so it just showed another spurt in that long homestand where you were able to survive it was a homestand, but a little bit of a schedule crunch on a back-to-back and things like that, and beat a legitimately great team. And I think that the best team by and large in the Eastern Conference. So I think that has to be my number one, number two after your Golden State one.
And then the other two, you mentioned them, were the back-to-back wins sort of in the span of a couple weeks against Denver, where we can talk about them sort of like sleepwalking. I think the first one, Oklahoma City probably caught them by surprise. That's the one where Shai goes for 40 and then gets a game-winning shot in clutch time. But the other one, that's more interesting to me because that's one you would think that the Thunder would have their attention. They'd want to come in there, win, and the Thunder win by 26 on the road. And that was their third game in 4 nights. And the 2 games before that were home against the Wolves and the Knicks. So this could have been a schedule loss, but it just doesn't matter. Oh, that's actually the one that Shai goes for 40, 17 in the third quarter, but just a great win that sort of established to me of like, oh, this is a real team that they're going in and Denver should be ready realistically. And they just took it to them.
Now, this one isn't as sexy for me that I'm going to suggest, but what about that game against Minnesota where like the Ant missed the free throws? That's of course an anomaly. It's probably not going to happen most nights that he's not going to miss 3 straight free throws. But in that game, just the game flow of how they won that game, of grinding it out, of switching styles, of gritting their teeth defensively, finding a way to win. Like that game embodied what we've seen from this Thunder team this whole season of just finding ways to win, whether you want to go high pace, whether you want to shoot a lot of threes and get into a shootout, whether you want to, sit down defensively, they can win in a multitude of ways. And teams that can do that historically are really good in the postseason. So not the sexiest game, but I do think a game that told you a lot was that game against Minnesota.
Yeah, it's very important to be able to win in different ways because it's not always going to be the wire-to-wire victory. You're going to have to win it ugly, and sometimes like that Minnesota one sort of comes to mind the same vein as one against Phoenix where Dub down the stretch just takes over and wins it. And I've been really impressed with this young team of just their resilience because it seems like every couple games they get punched in the mouth in the first half. Like we even saw them kind of stagger against Memphis a few days ago, and they come out of the locker room, everything's fine, and they take over. So it's probably more comfortable just to win wire to wire on a lot of these nights, but that's not how you get better. And the Thunder have continued to get better in that facet all season.
Yeah, and then my last kind of example is just twofold of just the 2 different times it happened where you come back from the 30-0 run from Dallas, and then a few months later, Phoenix, like you mentioned, goes on this 28-15, 38-15 run, and they had this avalanche at home, and you still were able to go on a run of your own and beat Phoenix. Those are 2 teams. Of course, Phoenix had some injuries in that game, didn't have Booker, but those were 2 instances of this team not folding, having that resilience that you talk about. And it's just to do that on the road, it adds fuel to the fire that I just don't believe that this Thunder team will be phased by the postseason. We talk all about their inexperience, but what's going to be the difference whenever the calendar flips to April here in a couple of weeks? What's going to be this magical difference? The game's already gotten called more physically down the stretch of this season. That's going to benefit the Thunder to see games called that way, which is what it's going to be like in the postseason. They've already handled a tough road environment and tough road scoring stretches. Like, what's going to be this magical shoe that drops in the postseason? But I think the Thunder team is just poised to win games like that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, there might be some instances where we see some younger guys who aren't necessarily ready for this, who are a little bit lesser on the roster, but it's not like you're going into this West and you have to go on the road and play against play in some very hostile environments. I mean, like outside of Denver, like there's not a lot of teams or like away sites that would really, I don't know, wouldn't scare me is not the word, but I wouldn't be nervous about if I were a Thunder fan. Because like Minnesota, no one's scared of going playing there. No one's scared of going and playing Phoenix or New Orleans or at the Clippers or something like that. So I think the Thunder are in a very good spot where they probably have one of, if not the best home court advantage in the West going into the playoffs right now.
Yeah, I think that they're going to use that to their advantage, and the Western Conference is going to be extremely tough, and we're going to get into that coming up. How far can this team go? What's their ceiling, and what does the bracket look like if the season ended today? We'll talk about all of that coming up. But I do want to tell you right now about our good friends over at LinkedIn. LinkedIn is great. Check them out today, linkedin.com/lockedonnba. And whenever you do, they're going to help you find qualified candidates faster for your job. Post your job for free at LinkedIn. That's why you check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs is going to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. They're not just another job board. They have a vast network of over 1 billion professionals that are going to be the right place for you to make your hire. It gives you access to professionals and helps you find them with ease. LinkedIn does it all for you while making the process easier and more intuitive. So hiring is easy when you have this many qualified candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses have a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows as a small business owner, you're wearing so many hats that you cannot afford or have the time or the resources to have a long, drawn-out hiring process. So LinkedIn is going to help you consistently find hires and make the process easier for you, better and faster. They even just launched a new feature that helps you write a job description, making the process quicker and easier in that way too. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba. To post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you, talking Thunder basketball. Subscribe for free across all podcasting platforms. Also, check out Michael on Sports on YouTube. Michael, how good can this Thunder team be? Like, we've talked about what the season has meant and what they've done so far to this season, but when you look at this team top to bottom, what's your forecast right now? We'll do this again here in 15 games, but right now, what's your forecast for the Thunder?
Well, just put it out there first. This is assuming everyone's healthy. I mean, obviously, there are injuries that can happen that can change the whole dynamic of the conference. I would say their ceiling right now is the Western Conference Finals. The only team that I just feel like is going to beat them, and it just is the matchup because they have the best player in the world, is Denver. But realistically, I think the Thunder have a shot against anybody else in the West. So it really just comes down to when or if you play Denver. But I would say the conference finals is definitely a ceiling.
Yeah, I think that this team can absolutely get there and can make a run this season for all the reasons we mentioned before. Whenever you're looking at a team that has an MVP on their team, there's a couple rising stars, and J-Dub at this point is a superstar. I mean, he does everything that a superstar does. So when you have all that, and I think that the Thunder have depth, and I know that depth is overlooked in the postseason, but I don't think that Mark will be a traditional postseason coach. I don't think that Mark will only play 8 guys and predetermine it before the series starts and just go. I think that he's going to take the matchup into account, take the game flow into account, and he will mix and match until he finds the right combination. And the Thunder stylistically can match up with a lot of different looks. Even if teams go extremely big, the Thunder have seen Jay, Will, and Chet play well together if they had to draw into that. So I think that this team is poised for a big postseason run. I would bet a lot, even independent of the matchup right now, assuming health, that they get their first playoff series win since Kevin Durant was in town. And even that is just a massive accomplishment in and of itself. But even for as high as we are in the Thunder's ceiling, are there any matchups in the West that you think, besides Denver, that the Thunder should be looking to avoid in this first round or in this immediate future?
I mean, the Lakers one is obvious just for a number of reasons. I mean, you can go just conventional basketball is the rebounding issues and things like that. And then unconventional, we can put our tinfoil hats on here. I think the NBA would very much like it for LeBron to be in the playoffs and go to the second round and all these things, and the Thunder can have their fun in the next few years. And I think going up against the Lakers, you're not going to, we're not saying anything's rigged, but the calls are not necessarily going to be in your favor a lot of those nights. So I'd be nervous of that. And then one that we've talked about before that I felt comfortable with is a good matchup. I'm feeling less and less, and that's Dallas. I think that they just match up extremely well with the Thunder in terms of the Thunder love to turn teams over. Luka and Kyrie just don't really turn the ball over, and they're also a good rebounding team. And then you have two of those guys that can just go off and be the best player in a series at any time. Luka's been an incredible playoff performer, and Kyrie the same. So those two teams are the first ones that come to mind, but there's probably maybe one other matchup, but those are the main two. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that those are the two. And we talked about Dallas, and I was kind of out there saying that I don't like Dallas as a matchup because Luka by himself is worth at least 2 games in a four game. First to 4, he's worth 2. Then you have Kyrie to deal with. Then you have just a good night from the whole team of Dallas, and you're really climbing uphill. So I am not a big fan of that Dallas matchup. I will say that for the Thunder's aspect of it, I think you have a much better coach, frankly. I think that Jason Kidd, yes, he took the Mavericks to a Western Conference Finals, but I think that he's going to get outcoached by Mark. But past that, the Thunder probably have better complementary role players and more depth than Dallas for sure. But again, does the depth end up mattering? We'll have to wait and see. I think that it will to a more degree than most people think. But still, when you have Kyrie and Luka, that's 2 proven killers. And we can project that Shai is going to be a killer in the postseason. We can project that J-Dub has proven that he can hit big shots. And we talked about Chet's big shot in Golden State. But these guys are 2 proven guys that have done it on the biggest stage. For Kyrie, doing it in the NBA Finals, one of the most historic NBA Finals that we've seen. And then for Luka, every time he steps foot in the postseason, he turns a series by himself. And even against the Clippers, who had some of the best defenders in the world, he was able to make them look silly. So I think that with the Mavericks, it would be a bit scary. It'd be very fun though. Fun aspect. You just run up and down the highway to that series. It would be very, very fun. But I think that it'd be one of the better first round matchups. Not to say that the Thunder can't win it. I think that the Thunder would still, I think I would still pick them to win it, but it would be a knockout, drag out fight because that's what every series will be that Luka's involved with.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think I would pick the Thunder in 6 or 7, but I'd rather not have to go and figure that out. I'd rather it just be a hypothetical for now. I think that the Mavericks are a very difficult matchup, and we've seen this year in and year out with the playoffs for over a decade. Is the further you get into the playoffs, it's about shot making. What do you do when your offense grinds to a halt? And there aren't too many better shot makers than Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic. And those are 2 guys I just really wouldn't want to mess with. Like I mentioned, I think you said you'd probably still pick the Thunder, but it's a situation where it's like, I'd rather just not get into that. So I'm hoping they can pass up the Kings here and just get to that 6th spot, but it's going to be interesting no matter what happens.
Do you have a matchup that like you are just doing cartwheels on the street about if the Thunder draw them in the first round, like that you just love and want?
I think the Warriors would be a really nice matchup. I think Chet matches up with them well if they're going to try to go to small. And they're just an older team, and I don't know that more than anything, they don't have anyone to guard Shai or Dub. And if you don't have that, you're going to be in a world of trouble. And the Thunder can guard Steph decently with Lou Dort and Kaysen, and you're not really scared of Klay Thompson as much in this iteration, or Andrew Wiggins or Chris Paul. So I would probably say the Warriors. I know that they have all this postseason experience, but I think that the Thunder would just vastly just out-talent them.
Yeah, I think that the Warriors, besides the PTSD aspect of things, they would be one of the more interesting matchups for the Thunder, and one where you could see a passing of the guard. I think that you could absolutely see the Thunder benefit from playing Golden State as much as you are shivering about all the history between these 2 franchises. I think that would really benefit OKC. And really, the Western Conference is going to come down to kind of a pick your poison. Like, I don't think that there's just a great matchup for anybody. I think that every team, even Denver, you might be favored to win. You might be picked to win, but it's not going to be easy. This is going to be, I fully believe, one of the best postseasons that we've seen in the Western Conference, because from top to bottom, would it shock you, like just stun you, if Luka and Kyrie were able to beat Denver, or if you were able to see the Pelicans knock off the Clippers or the Kings knock off Minnesota, like would any of those results just flabbergast you?
I mean, I'd be pretty shocked if the Nuggets went down in round one, but I think everything else is pretty much on the table. I have a lot of confidence in Denver as just a top to bottom team, and I feel like they're hitting their stride at the right time. But yeah, if Luka and Kyrie go nuclear, like we saw the Suns almost do it last year, they beat the Nuggets more than anybody last year. They got them in 2 games, and it's because Devin Booker and Kevin Durant were just unbelievable. So I'd be pretty stunned if that happened. But yeah, if the Pelicans upset the Clippers or if the Kings beat the Wolves, like none of that would be super, super surprising. Like we just have, as much as these teams are sort of kind of like grouped up in the standings, they couldn't be like closer in terms of just like competitiveness. And I think that anything can happen in this playoffs.
I'm really looking forward to it. I think that for a long time, especially in the first round, the NBA was like the opposite of March Madness, where you just knew who was going to win. It's just a matter of like, how are they going to play with their food and how long is this going to take? This year, I cannot wait to see how it all unfolds. And we're going to go through what if the season ended today and just see how tough this Western Conference actually is coming up. But first, I want to say right now, our good friends over at Stitch Fix. Check out Stitch Fix right now because they're great. And they can really help you look good at stitchfix.com/locked-on. Right now, that you want to get that confidence boost in your wardrobe, in your outfits, and you want to be looking good, that's where Stitch Fix comes in. With Stitch Fix, it's your stylist who understands your style, size, budget, and they're going to help you with all the shopping. They take care of it all for you and ship you off this box that has 5 items in it. You review that box, and you say, hey, I like this piece, I like that piece, I don't like this one. You send the ones you don't like back for free, then you keep the ones that you like, and they help you just revitalize your wardrobe and make you be on trend and stylish. They're great. Go to stitchfix.com right now. That's stitchfix.com/locked-on. Stitchfix.com/locked-on. The style that makes you feel good and look good. Get started today at stitchfix.com/locked-on. Stitchfix.com/locked-on. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you talking Thunder basketball. Michael, let them know about what your latest and greatest YouTube video is about.
I've been working on stocks, so just steals and blocks. I know everybody's been talking about the Thunder's rebounding issues this year, and the fact is that I feel like the Thunder are punting on certain aspects of it, and they're making up for it with steals and blocks. The Thunder are the only team top 3 in both steals and blocks. They're number 1 in blocks. I think like number 3 in steals. They have 2 top 6 guys in total or in stocks per game, and Chet and Shai. I did a lot of legwork just trying to get interviews and some of our press conferences about it. I got some good stuff from Mark and others. So yeah, at Michael on Sports on YouTube, there's a breakdown of it, and I think you'd enjoy it.
You will enjoy it, and that's what's going to help us navigate through the playoff picture right now. So if the season ended today, the Thunder are the 1 seed. The Nuggets are the 2 seed. You have the Clippers, Pelicans in the 4-5, and the Timberwolves, Kings in the 3-6. In the play-in tournament, 9-10 is Warriors, Lakers, and then 7-8 is Mavericks, Suns. The 7-8 winner goes directly to face Denver, and then the loser of that game has another shot to get in. They go play the winner of the Warriors, Lakers game. The winner of that game goes and takes on Oklahoma City. So let's start with the play-in tournament. Do you have any sort of huge lean on who wins this Warriors, Lakers, and then Mavericks, Suns tournament?
I would probably take the Lakers and then Mavericks, Suns. Like, just put that on pay-per-view. I can't wait for that. I don't know that I have a good feeling either way. I mean, I guess if you're going to just say who can get the most points, score 150, I'm going to take the Mavericks, but anything can happen with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker out there. Either way, no matter who comes out of that, it's going to be impressive. But I'm curious to what you think.
Yeah, I think that I'm going to take the Suns in this matchup. I think that they're going to win the initial game. The Mavericks will go to the second game and take on the Lakers. I think that the Mavericks beat the Lakers. So I think that it's going to be Thunder, Mavericks, and then Nuggets, Suns. That's where I'm at.
Is this wish casting, or is this something just for convenience for some driving to the playoff series, or is this exactly how you're feeling?
So this is how I'm feeling, but also that really helps. My thing with, I think that whoever wins the Mavericks Suns matchup, whoever loses that, I should say, they're going to take on the Thunder. And I just think that the Mavericks, it's tough to continuously beat down an opponent, and they've gotten the better of the Suns so often. And I have a lot of questions about Jason Kidd this season on the sidelines. I think that the Suns will do enough. I think that they'll see the benefit of taking this game ultra seriously, not depending on beating, the 9-10 team to get just a little bit of additional rest and go take on Denver. Whereas, the Mavericks, it takes one off night from their complementary players, I think they're going to get outcoached. And so I would have the Mavericks losing that game, but I could see it going either way. Bottom line is, I do think that we're going to see 7-8 get in.
Yeah, that's probably the way. I guess, unless, but we're doing it as the day of the standings. Unless Sacramento falls, I think they could get potentially picked off by one of those other teams. But I'm with you. Frank Vogel's one of the more underrated coaches in the NBA, so I have no issues with you taking the Suns there.
So, who is going to be your Thunder matchup? Did you take Dallas for the Thunder or the Suns?
I'll take Dallas just so we're on the same page here. It's going to be more interesting.
So let's go Nuggets, Suns. I'm going to go Nuggets in like 6.
I'd say Nuggets in 5. I think that Jokic is going to just torment Nurkic, and I think that the Nuggets are about the same, if not better than last year, and I think the Suns are worse.
I really like 5. I'm just too scared, honestly, to say a series ends in 5. But I like it. I like the Nuggets overwhelmingly in that series. I think that if they did go 6, it would not be a competitive 6. It'd be like, Denver just wanted to, close it out later. Like they just were not feeling up to it. But Timberwolves, Kings, are you buying into the inexperience of Minnesota? Do you love Sabonis? Where are you at in this series?
I wrote this down in my notes as the NBA TV series in the West. This will be on NBA TV. The Kings are 2-1 against the Wolves this season. I think the Wolves make this super defensive and kill the Kings on the boards like we saw the Warriors do last season. But the Wolves scare me because if the Kings can hold this into the crunch time, anything can happen. Like I have zero trust in the Wolves' crunch time execution and offense. So it's going to be really interesting. I have the Wolves winning in 6, but it could really go either way if the Kings can just hold on and get it into the crunch time part of the game.
I have Wolves in 6 also, only the Wolves make 3 12-plus point comebacks in this series, and Sacramento just feels like they've just choked away an entire run.
That would be awful. I think that there's going to be some interesting things going on in this series. I think that Sabonis Gobert is going to be really interesting. Who knows what we're going to see with Towns, but the Wolves have the best player in the series with Ant, so I'm going to go with them. But if, like I keep saying, if the Kings can just stretch it out and keep it competitive until the end of games, I think anything can happen because I trust Fox with the ball more than I do with some of the late game execution of Anthony Edwards, who's still young and makes a lot of mistakes. Karl Anthony Towns makes a boneheaded play every single time in crunch time. It feels like Gobert's not going to do anything. And then I'm not really scared of Mike Conley or Jaden McDaniels or any of those guys really beating me.
Then we got Clippers, Pelicans. I'm going to go Clippers, and I'm going to go Clippers in 7. They kind of mess around a few games, win it in LA, but the Pelicans, they're playing really, really good. Lockdown Pelicans is very excited.
They're 3-1 against the Clippers this year. I looked that up. But it's hard to pick against Kawhi Leonard as long as, if he's healthy, obviously. And with Kawhi, that's almost never true. But I'm going to pick the Clippers in 7 as well, but I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, if you're saying it's 7, you can't be shocked if it goes the other way, obviously. But 3-1 this year, I just don't have a lot of trust or belief in the Pelicans. They seem hot or cold, up and down more than any NBA team over the last few seasons. And I'm going to trust the industry knowledge of Kawhi Leonard and those guys.
Then what you've all been waiting for, Thunder, Mavericks. What's your, we've kind of talked about the series, but what's your official, not official, unofficial prediction?
It's going 6 or 7 if those teams play, is what I would guess. I think that all those points we made earlier, Luke is a playoff monster. Kyrie also the same. The Mavericks match up well with the Thunder. I think that the coaching aspect is going to be a really big deal and sort of the depth pieces around. It's just a matter of how well do the Thunder contain Luka and Kyrie, and the discussion you and I have had about is just we see these sort of high usage heliocentric guys get into the playoffs and sort of get tired, like James Harden. And I would almost do something sort of like what the Bucks did to Kevin Durant quite a few years ago, and when he was with the Nets, of just like, you're gonna score 70 every night, and if you can do that 4 times, you win. But we just don't think you can. But how you really get screwed over in losing to the Mavs is getting into that blender where all their role players are hitting. I think that's what really killed the Suns. So it's going to be a really interesting series, and then we get even more and more propaganda of Shai versus Luka.
Shai versus Luka propaganda is going to be just at an all-time high. I think that the Thunder win a wild series in 7 by winning the first 2 games. They win them fairly convincingly, and people are like putting the series to bed. Then Luka happens for 2 straight games. Then Kyrie happens, and now it's like, oh, see, the Thunder's inexperienced. They're rebounding. It's all coming back on them now. And then the Thunder are still able to recover and win this series in 7. That's kind of how I have it playing out in this fan fiction, way too early prediction.
Yeah, that wouldn't be surprising. I said 6 or 7. I'm taking the Thunder. I wasn't clear about that, but I think that just about anything can happen in this series where you have 2 guys like Shai and Luka, and then you add Kyrie, add J-Dub, who can just go off at any time. But I like the Thunder just in terms of top to bottom on their roster of guys they're going to be playing. I think that they have less holes in their team, and they're less reliant on a lot of their role players getting really, really hot. So I'll take OKC, and then the coaching matchup we've talked about a lot of Mark Daigneault, I think, is just leaps and bounds above Jason Kidd.
So the reason for doing this is showing how tough the West is. So we both think that at minimum, the Thunder are playing a 6-game series. At minimum, the Clippers are playing a 6-game series. At minimum, the Timberwolves are playing a 6-game series. And then Denver might have a 5-game series. Then the Thunder have to go play the Clippers, which involves traveling to LA. And of course, the travel that goes into that. And the Nuggets have to go play Minnesota, which is not an easy travel situation either, but of course easier than going all the way out to LA. That's how tough this is. Now your big parade for beating the Mavericks and winning your first playoff series since Kevin Durant was in town is playing the LA Clippers. Where do you fall on that matchup with those 2 defensive guys against Shai? Where do you fall?
That's tough. I'll take the Thunder. I think that the Clippers are so predicated on playing small, and Chet just kind of throws a monkey wrench into all of that. And I don't know. I don't. If Kawhi can really lock in and guard Shai, I think it makes the series really, really interesting. I just don't know if he has that right now, especially in a second round series. Like, it's one thing to gear up in the first round and really do that, but like after you play hypothetically 6 or 7 games against Zion and those guys, I don't know what it's going to look like. And then James Harden's not a great playoff performer. We've seen Paul George come up short here in Oklahoma City and other places. So I think that's another one where, just a testament to what you're talking about with how deep it is, that goes 6 or 7 probably.
Yeah, I don't think that either team has a cakewalk in this one, but I do think that the Thunder win just because it's a war of attrition. Like, these series take forever, and it's 2 totally different styles of play in a roundabout way. Of you're gonna get banged up with Valanciunas, you're gonna get banged up with Zion. Now come play Oklahoma City, they're gonna pace and space you to death. And so by the time you get down to game 6 and 7, who's got the fresher legs, who's got the better depth, and who can hold on to get a series? You mentioned the James Harden, Paul George effect way off P in the playoffs. Like, who's to say they're not gonna have a couple stinkers, in those big moments? I don't think that it's too much of a homer take to say that the ones who will be the 4 seed, and the Thunder, I think, will beat the Clippers. And then you have the conference finals. There it is. The Thunder have made it there, but it's an extremely tough road. And then you're going to be sitting there waiting on Denver, Minnesota. I think Denver wins it fairly easily. I think that it'd be like maybe a 6-game series, just to put a little respect on Minnesota, but a 6-game series where we all kind of knew the outcome of the series. Where are you at on that series?
I feel the same way. I mean, the Nuggets took off, or the Wolves took 1 game off of them last season, and the Wolves are better this season. So I think 6 is appropriate. I just think the Nuggets are just too good and just too smart to lose to a team like Minnesota unless they just bomb away from 3 for an entire series, which I don't see happening. Jokic is the best player in the world, so I would be pretty surprised given this bracket if they don't make it back to the conference finals.
Yeah, this bracket really sets up well for Denver, and I think that for Oklahoma City too, as long as you can surpass Dallas. I think that Dallas might be a tough test, of course, and one of the tougher 8 seeds we've seen. But the Thunder would be able to navigate that from our prediction. At least we're going to do this again in like 3 weeks, so stay tuned for that. But Michael, this is a lot of fun. Do they get past Denver? I don't think so. Where are you at on Denver? I don't think it's impossible. I don't think it's going to happen.
I don't think we get the storybook ending. I think if you just made a guy in a lab to beat the Thunder, it would look like Jokic as a guy super high basketball IQ who can score in the low post, rebounding machine. He just sort of beats the Thunder in all the aspects that they sort of lack right now. And I can't imagine, like, with all due respect, we love Chet. We think he's going to be really good. We think he's going to be awesome. But putting him in that sort of fire, I think, is just not fair against the best player in the world. So I'll take Denver probably in, let's say, 6, I think is probably fair.
Yeah, and Denver in 6 this season is a ton of respect for this Oklahoma City team, and this would be the toughest, path to the Western Conference Finals we've seen in a long time, because your number 8 seed is not a typical 8 seed. No matter if it's Dallas or if it's Phoenix or if it's the Lakers or if it's the Warriors, it's not your typical 8 seed. And to get this far would take a lot, as we just demonstrated right here. But the Thunder can do it, and I don't think it's impossible for them to beat the Nuggets. But if you're making predictions, it's going to be really tough to knock off Denver for any team. East Coast, West Coast, whatever team it is, Denver is the reigning champs for a reason. And I think that the Thunder would need a lot to break their way, which has happened before. We've seen things break teams' ways before, but let's go Denver in this one. Nonetheless, though, that would be a heck of a story. What do you think, to leave us with a funnier note, what do you think is the most entertaining, funny, it's not really important, but it's still cool that it happened, moment or moments of the season?
I have a few here. One that I really enjoyed was back in Utah after Josh Giddey hit a Euro step layup, was J. Will, Chet, and J-Dub all mirroring the Euro step on the sideline, which has been turned to a GIF into oblivion. Not something that just changed the course of the entire season, but something funny. What about you?
Yeah, that was hilarious. I think that the barking sensation or craze has been really funny. It doesn't matter, but the fact that like the PA system is playing Who Let the Dogs Out, and it's just kind of this weird rallying cry. Like, you're going to be telling people for a long time about the season of bark, and it was a fun season.
I've got a couple more here. We've got J. Will and J-Dub. We talked to them after practice one day, and we talked to J. Will, and he said they were doing Secret Santa for each other with a $20 spending limit. I think Aaron Wiggins said he was buying J. Will a goldfish. Just interesting little tidbits like that I always think are funny.
Yeah, it's interesting to see like just how young, and like you would never get that story out of like Clippers camp just because of where they're at in their life and their stages of their career. It's really funny to see this team who's literally all in the same wavelength. Like they're almost to a T. They're just the same exact stages of their life almost. And they seriously enjoy being around each other, which is pretty cool. It's not so much of a work environment in the sense of like co-working, coexisting, more so like they enjoy embracing each other and kind of truly being close friends, which you get barking and stories like this that really make it more fun and enjoyable for the fan base as well. These things kind of spill into the Thunder fan base. So the barking, a lot of fun. The goldfish, hopefully still with us, but they don't have the longest lifespan. But hopefully he's still above the toilet level, whatever the sewer system is down there. Really, the funny parts of this season, I think, has just been watching this team bond, of the TikToks that J. Will and J-Dub made of the twin. I'm not going to sing the song, even though it's a good song. But like that was really funny. Just moments like that remind you this team's kicking butt right now in the NBA, and they're also should be in college right now. Should be like a fun college March Madness story.
Yeah, another one of those that reminds me of that is the Slam cover, the magazine, and then Trey Man photoshopping himself into it was iconic. One of my favorite ones, him just saying it's like, oh yeah, the Slam photo shoot was so cool, glad to be a part of it.
And Trey Man flying the plane home allegedly on his social media, that was great. Really missed Trey Man on the social media game. Credit to him though, playing well in Charlotte. But Michael, this was fun. Let them know again where they can find all your stuff, what you're cooking, and where you're at.
I'm cooking at Michael on Sports on Twitter/X. Michael on Sports on YouTube. You can find some of those YouTube breakdowns where I did the most recent one about stocks. I've got another one coming up soon. In the past, I've done one about J-Dub being the king in the fourth quarter. and Chet, and I broke down all his blocks from this season. So should be a good time. Let me know if you check it out. I think you'll enjoy it. But Rylan, thanks for having me on. Always a good time.
Thanks for coming on. And until tomorrow, be good and be good to one